I bid you all good morning, good evening, and good night wherever you're watching this transmission. It is I, Mike Martins, bringing you a very important housing video because, we covered this on trends in the housing market, but I get still more people emailing me the same question. And what to look forward to, where to look at, what is going to happen next. And we've been talking about housing on this channel for almost 10 years now. So here it goes, guys. I've gotten this question. There's an article for it conveniently, and it is here. Let's go to article scan, please. Which housing crash will be worse, Vancouver or Toronto? That is a good question, and I got the answer for you. Let's read a bit of what this has to say here. This is from our friends over at the Motley Fool, and they'll be a really good website. I've gotten a lot of good articles from these guys, lots of good calling a spade, kind of like Better Dwelling is for housing type of thing. Motley Fool is the same thing. They kind of just want to get it out there and get your opinion on it, right? So here it is. So which housing crash will be worse, Vancouver or Toronto? I've lived in both cities. I've experienced both cities. I know both cities. And I lived in Miami and Mexico. And I'm from Portugal. So I've been around. And let me tell you, which housing crash will be worse, Vancouver or Toronto? That's a very good question. Now, let's see what it says here. The country has seen consistent rise in property prices since 2003. Apart from one partial correction, if the housing bubble wouldn't have burst in the normal circumstances, the chances of it bursting now are getting higher and higher. So, guys, I predicted on my old channel that the housing market was going to crash in Vancouver after 2010 Olympics. And that was my prediction. And man, was I ever dead wrong. It's still going on in 2020. Why? Again, we sold to foreign investors. Canada laundered a pile of money. People wanted to park their money here. And what better and secure thing to put your money in is in real estate. Buy out the locals. The locals could go to hell. That's how we're treated. And we got to kind of make ends meet and pay crazy rent, basically rent and mortgage payments and having to lower rates to keep up with that. So, and that's going to tie into another article I have here. Canadian real estate faces new problem, deflation. And I had no choice but blank for rent rises. Blank for rent, you could read it there, with COVID poverty. So let's go over these real quick. So who would be worse, Vancouver or Toronto? So let's keep reading here. The crash may not be uniform across the country. Some areas will be hit the hardest, while some may only suffer minimum damage. Most eyes are on the two largest housing markets in Canada, Vancouver and Toronto. Montreal's getting bought up big time. Investors are getting into Montreal big time. If we consider the numbers from April, things aren't looking good for either of the metropolises. In Greater Vancouver, sales activity saw a 39% drop compared to April 2019, while the housing inventory shrank by 34%. Only about 1,109 properties changed hands. Well, that's all. Wow. Making it the slowest April since 1982, and we covered that on the channel. 1982. What was out in 82? I think it was Flashdance and Flashdance. I'm just trying to think what was 82. Compared to last month's numbers, Vancouver's housing prices have gone up over 29%. Toronto paints a different picture compared to April 2019. Home sales declined by 69% in early April this year. Listings have also seen significant decline of 63.7%. So when there's less inventory on the market, obviously it's going to be it's hard to pick and choose, right? Average sale prices in the city dropped about 2.5%, and in the GTA about 2,975 residential real estate transactions occurred in April. That's barely 1/3 of the April 2019 number. The situation might have been a lot worse if it weren't for several government initiatives. Here we go. Allowed people to hold out, at least for now, but these are only temporary measures, and they may have bought the housing market some time. So that's what's been happening. They're buying time on the housing market because, God forbid, they actually run the economy on autopilot and let things happen when they should, instead of bringing in incentives, bringing in this first-time home buyer loans. Let's lower the thing. Let's get rid of the stress test so everyone could jump in head first. So basically they are immorally, financially distraught for lives. I'm going to see people applying for PTSD syndrome or something happening where they're just overwhelmed with the cost of living that they just can't function anymore. It's going to be crazy, you know what I'm saying? The real picture will emerge in the fall. The unemployment numbers alone can upset the balance of demand and supply and bring the market crashing down. The future is still pretty uncertain, but if we consider the housing market activity in April and in early May, Vancouver's housing market seems to be relatively better shape than Toronto's. So for investors, if you're looking for real estate investment that hasn't been impacted by the downturn in the housing market yet, you want to consider, so here it is, I think these are tickers here, foolishly take away the demand in the housing market, especially in the metropolises and other large cities, is usually tied pretty tightly to employment opportunities. If people don't find work in those areas, they'll move back to the cities and to their countries, leaving behind a surplus of supply of non-existent demand. Well, a lot of foreign investors own that, right? So the housing market recovery might follow the overall recovery of the economy, which might take some time. Okay, let's get to it here. Canadian real estate faces new problem, deflation. So obviously people are going to be paying more for stuff than what it's valued at, and nobody I know wants to do that. I don't know who in their right mind. So the deflation and the real value of debt. Deflation is when consumer prices fall. Sounds great, right? Who doesn't want to pay less for things? Declines at certain times, especially if due to decreasing manufacturing costs, can be great. Consumers have more money than they can spend or invest. However, it becomes a problem if it spreads across more segments and the general economy. It becomes a huge tailwind during an economic slowdown. This is dangerous, and especially when you're in deflationary mode and you're going into stagnation. Whoa, we're looking at a Japan 101 here, another Japan. So widespread of economic deflation lead to something called deflationary spiral, if you go back to Business 101 in school. Since prices are dropping, consumers wait to see if they could get a better deal. If the businesses can't sell inventory, they slow orders for new inventory and investment. This leads to lower employment, which leads to less demand. So it's actually pushing down and removing the productive sectors. And that is dangerous. Once you start removing the productive sectors in our business sectors, we're screwed. Because production starts to go down even further, which then what they're going to start doing is what the feds are doing in America and Canada with printing out money, is they're going to create the demand and hope, and then with no supply, if you catch my drift, right? If it becomes even more of an issue, if interest rates are kept low for a long period before, Keynes himself once warned that lowering rates after a period of extended low rates will fail to stimulate demand. It's already failed to stimulate demand because now the housing market in Canada, all over the Commonwealth right now, here it is. There's the change right there. Canadian Consumer Price Index, and there it is right there. Let me move my fat head out of the way. There it is right there. See that? There it is. Last time they did this was in 2008 and 9, and Canada rushed to lower rates and inject money. So here it is. Canadian Consumer Price Index components, the adjusted year-over-year percentage change for consumer prices. So there it is there. There's food, shelter, health and personal care. So what's clothing and footwear and transportation is going into negative territory. 1 month of deflation isn't a reason to panic, but it should pique the interest of most investors. It's not deflationary spiral at this point, but deflation is worse than too much inflation. You can provide cheap money, but you're depending on a change in consumer sentiment to spin things up again. As the fallout continues and the economy begins reopening, we'll start to see how drastically consumers' behave has changed. So we got to look at jobs, who's going to go back to work, who's ready to get back into things once they are allowed to, what's gonna happen, right? Are we gonna see a second wave, a third wave of this stupid thing, or what? You know what I'm saying? So this one here, and then I'm gonna give you guys what I think is gonna happen between Vancouver and Toronto when it comes to who's gonna get hurt the worst, right? Okay, so I had no choice. Blank for rent rises with Covey property. As a single mom, I had no choice. I didn't want to lose my housing. So this is it. A growing number of landlords are asking tenants for blank in exchange for housing as Covey lockdowns and job cuts have left many struggling to pay their rent, housing experts said. United States found 13% had seen an increase in blank harassment complaints during the Covey. So this is it's sad, but it's happening, guys. Okay, what do I think is going to happen with Toronto and Vancouver? Who's going to fall first the hardest? And I'll tell you who I think it's going to be. I think Vancouver is going to be hit the hardest because Toronto saw a mini correction in 2017-ish. Toronto did see a mini correction, oversupply on the market, and people kind of chopping prices, and then they started to see a resurgence in 2018 again, right? When they started easing the stress test and they started to ease a lot of things and they started holding back on certain things when it came to, they started actually introducing more things like first-time home buyers loans and all this Mickey Mouse jazz to get first-time home buyers in the housing market. Now, if you don't get fresh blood in the market, it's over. It's done. You're done. So you're done skis. The market's done, right? So how did the stock markets get fresh blood in the markets? Well, the government just prints money and shoves it into the markets, right? And they're buying bonds back, and they're buying, well, never mind that. They're buying, like, ETFs. They're buying ETFs, okay, that have zero market value. So, again, they're creating the demand, but there's no supply. And a lot of the junk that these governments are buying, and these junk bonds, and these crappy ETFs that they're buying up, to hopefully keep companies afloat or big corporations afloat and banks afloat and keeping the fake economy afloat. The fake economy. That's what we're doing. We're replacing. I even took notes and I discussed this with someone on the show on Mike in the Night. And it's very plain and simple. It's very plain and simple. The mission is to replace the productive economy of wage earners with the virtual assets of cookbooks and statistics. Well, Mike, I own a house. What do you mean virtual asset? You're paying 80, sometimes in some cases anywhere from 17 to 85 times over value of what you realistically should be paying for it. That's what I mean by virtual. People are in super delusional land right now. La la land. But okay, so what do I think is going to happen? I think Vancouver will hit the hardest if Vancouver can't maintain more foreign money to come in. If Vancouver can't maintain money coming in from China, they're screwed. Because a majority of people have already left the big city and they commute 1 to 2 hours to work. And then with people Vancouver will be hit the hardest in my opinion. Because what happened was Vancouver was going nuts in about 2016, tail end of early 2017. Vancouver put in a foreign buyer's tax and they got fed up with it. Everybody went to Toronto after, and Seattle, Washington. Investors went there. They skipped Vancouver and they went to Seattle, Washington. I actually covered that on the channel. I actually have a video up about that. How Chinese investors are skipping Vancouver altogether and going straight to Seattle, Washington. Same thing over across to Toronto. The ones that went to Toronto kind of got screwed because then they started putting the foreign buyer's tax, vacant home tax, and everything. Seattle, they really didn't do much, but they kept blaming the tech workers for that, right? And blaming the tech workers, I actually want to bring up an article real quick for you guys, bringing up the tech workers. It's right here. It's actually disgusting. Yeah, here it is. It's disgusting. Here it is. For the tech workers being blamed for everything, look at this. Let me adjust the article scan here. $650 billion, Facebook to cut pay of remote workers moving to lower cost living areas. Oh, I want to work remotely for Facebook, but I'm going to work in a lower cost area. And you know what Facebook's going to do? They're going to lower your wages. They're going to cut Facebook to cut the pay of remote workers moving to lower. They want you to stay in the slave areas and pay high rents and high costs of living. That's disgusting. And do you know why Facebook would do that? Because infrastructurally, you're no longer paying taxes close to where they are. And then the poop on the streets is going to sit there longer because they won't have the tax money to go remove the poop. The poop patrol that goes out, right? So, wow. The company said it aims to aggressively ramp up its hiring of remote workers, and they will take a measured approach to opening up permanent remote work positions for existing employees. So there it is, guys. That's what's happening there. This is really scary. By the way, you're going to make 50% less because you're living in Utah, and that's not fair for somebody living in California. Well, if someone wants to live in California and pay $3,000-$4,000 for a 2-bedroom apartment, that's their problem. So, anyways. So that's what my wrap up on that, guys. And for Vancouver and the tale of two cities, Toronto and Vancouver, Vancouver will be hit the hardest. Toronto is seeing a mass exodus in itself, just like people leaving Facebook and getting remote jobs somewhere else. Toronto did see a mass exodus to the secondary and tri-cities, and then moving way out to cities that I've never have to look. I lived in Toronto when I was a kid until I finished high school, and I had to look on a map for some of these cities in Toronto because I had no idea where they were. So, anyways, I just kind of wanted to throw that out there for you guys. Which crash will be worse, Toronto or Vancouver? They're both going to be bad, but I think Vancouver's going to hit the hardest because since the 2010 Olympics, the price of housing never went down. Canada replaced the local people or the local wage earners with money overseas and competed for big money. Big money came in, bought out the locals. Locals had nowhere to go, so tens of thousands of hundreds of thousands of people left the city, and the surrounding area of Vancouver was completely unreachable. And then Toronto started getting this phenomenon in 2016, and you start seeing that pattern emerge there. Ireland, Dublin saw this pattern. Seattle saw this pattern. All these major cities. And I did a video not long ago on my channel, guys. I want to show you guys that basically it's coming to rural areas in America where people are going to start paying overpriced values. You go down to Utah, you could pick up a house for $160,000, a 4-bedroom. You could pick up something decent in Florida still for under $200,000 with a pool, right? But yeah, the price of everything is getting expensive. So here's some videos, guys. If you're still watching this, thank you. So let's go to article scan, guys. Take a gander at some of these videos. This one here, China buying up Canada. Trends in the housing market from the other day. We go into all this stuff. Bidding wars, right here. Bidding wars coming to rural America. That's what's going to be happening, and whatever's left of America will get picked by the vultures. And in America is a very interesting phenomenon, what's happening there. It's actually going to be the foreign investors that went in and bought out all these major cities, pushed the housing migrants, the people from California, Oregon, Washington State, New York, Massachusetts, Vermont, pushed those people out. So they're now they're going to other cheaper states to live, which is fine. But see, in Canada, we don't have that. In Canada, you're in one of the two big cities, or you're 2 hours out of the city, or you're nowhere in Canada. And that's the problem we have here in Canada. We don't have like Texas where you got 20, 30 major cities you could move to. We're not like that here in Canada. That's our problem. We're running out of place. We're going to have to ask a country, like, we can't afford to live in our own country. Can we immigrate to your country? We speak the language, we're this and that, and hopefully they could give us some sort of leeway into another country if Canada gets so bad where it becomes a country for the rich, right? Okay, so that's that, guys. I wanted to cover all that. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Thanks for watching, subscribing, being part of the channel, guys. Share this video, get it out there. Who will be worse in your opinion, Toronto or Vancouver? I think they're equally be bad in their own terms. I think Vancouver has already seen the mass exodus in full. Toronto's seeing people going past Niagara to Windsor and to other places in London, Ontario, and getting way out there, and people even leaving the province and going to Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and other parts. So it's very interesting time to live when we're living under these invisible financial handcuffs that we're tied to. Let me know what you guys think. Comment below. Thanks for watching.